my Pixie roll. Is zero.
It was a tiny one.
And then the traffic was crazy. So
Thank you all for coming out. Hi, everyone. I see some familiar faces and some unfamiliar faces. If you guys want to move up, this is like conversation. This is not a traditional author talk. We are about to get into it because a lot of people are unwell. And it took Dr. G telling me that I was unwell to really shift and change everything for me, and also shift and change the direction of this book. And maybe I can start there. We're not start there. Cool. Reading for you all. If you have your book, it's page 39. And just to set the scene, I had been diagnosed with high blood pressure, was very traumatized by that diagnosis, and had heard about Dr. G, an integrative health doctor. Had never been to an integrative health doctor or had not heard of integrative health. And I got on your waiting list. And by the time it was time of my appointment, I felt like I was over at any second. You know, you start.
You look great though. But
you know, when you have a diagnosis that is, you know, hard like that on you, it's all consuming. So I walked into your office and thinking that I was at a traditional doctor's office, I'm like getting ready to undress immediately. So I'm like, okay. She's like, wait. Tell me your name. And we sat at your desk and we talked for like 45 minutes. And at the end of that conversation, so I'm at the bottom of page 39, from my childhood to young adulthood, to motherhood, to being an employed and unemployed empty nester, racked with shame about having high blood pressure from work-induced stress, we talked about everything. Still, nothing could have prepared me for her diagnosis. Christine, you are unwell, Dr. G said, and all I could do was cry. Unwell. Now, a state of being in which a person feels physically or mentally ill, unhealthy, or generally not in good health. When I tell you that diagnosis hit me hard, my focus immediately shifted away from getting off high blood pressure medication and antidepressants. The only thing I wanted to do was be well. Most people are unwell, Dr. G explained as she handed me a box of tissues. They just aren't aware of it. The beautiful thing is that you can and will get better because our bodies are always trying to be well. We just have to learn to listen. Then, Dr. G asked, Christine, have you ever heard of the 5 foundations of wellness? It was the question that changed both my life and the course of this book. The 5 foundations of wellness is a diagnostic paradigm widely used in traditional, alternative, and integrative medicine to assess a patient's health. It takes into consideration the state of our physical, emotional, mental, social, and spiritual health to determine our overall well-being. Our physical health is assessed by the state of our body, including but not limited to daily movement and exercise, and whether we are getting proper nutrition and adequate rest. Our emotional health is determined by how well we understand, manage, and express our feelings. Our mental or intellectual health takes into consideration our ability to learn, grow, and foster creativity, as well as our ability to maintain and strengthen our problem-solving skills. Our social health is evaluated by the strength of our romantic and interpersonal relationships, and whether we feel supported by the communities in which we live and serve. Last, our spiritual health is assessed not only by our religion or faith-based practices, but also by whether we are doing meaningful work and feel we are living a meaningful life. If any one of these foundations of health is compromised, a patient is deemed unwell. Because to be well, we need all aspects of our well-being: physical, emotional, mental, social, and spiritual, to be in optimal levels. While it may sound dramatic, I am convinced that my appointment with Dr. G not only forever changed my life, but also saved it.
What do you say? Thank you. Yeah, I think, well, first of all, I think it wasn't until I read the book that I revisited that I used those words, and clearly I have to refine my delivery. It should be so dramatic.
I thought it was good though. I mean, what did he?
Exactly. Sometimes you just have to say things, I mean, especially, taking the context who you're speaking to and speaking with, and you were at a place where you were already doing all the mental calculations of, how do I get back to be well? Just like, let's slow down. We're not even asking the right question, which is, why did you become hypertensive in the first place? Yeah. With a system that is designed to self-regulate, to self-organize, how did it all of a sudden decide to exhibit high blood pressure? That just doesn't happen out of nowhere. And of course, in the ordered conventional world, we tend to dissect a person down to their parts, right? And address specific issue or specific symptom. And that's where sometimes that's necessary. Sometimes I practice inclusive, comprehensive, integrative medicine. Sometimes, someone presents with blood pressure that's the point where they have a heteropic event, you have to use scan. But when it's ongoing, when it's something that's just, that's, again, not to be dramatic, that it is turned the silent killer, then maybe that's why it was such a profound diagnosis for you, because it kind of, you didn't realize, it's happening. The right question to ask is, what's going on with the whole person to be? And you have to draw on those foundations and repeat that.
So, is anyone here unfamiliar with integrative health? Or is everyone kind of familiar with what that is? Honor so? Yeah, it's okay. I had no idea what it was. And I think it's really important that we explain what that is. So I'm going to give the layman's term, and then I'm going to layman's definition, and then I'll let Dr. D explain. But the way it was explained to me is that integrative health doctor works with your primary care physician, right? So, and I guess some people, you can have solely integrative health, but usually people find you because their general practitioner has diagnosed them with something. The solution is medication, and they tell one of their friends, and their friend is like, you do not have to be on medication for the rest of your life. Let me introduce you to my integrative health doctor. I feel like that's like the big gateway. Yeah. And so that's what happened to me with my friend Yaz. And I thought it was very interesting because after I had my breakdown about being unwell, and you explained that, and you said, here's the thing, and you want to get off my blood pressure medication, but it's working. I'm more concerned about your social well, because that's where that's where a lot of the disruption was at the time. And you said, because if that, you call it well, you said your social health. I make them wells, but you said if that is off, then it means that you're struggling to get sleep at night. And if you're struggling to get sleep at night, no, your cortisol levels are high, and your cortisol levels are high. And you just went down the list, connecting everything, and I was like, and I think that's sort of the challenge, right? Whether it's whether we get medication from our doctor, whether we self-medicate, which is what the Ross is talking about. There was a time I would have ate a bag of Tootsie Rolls. I couldn't have just had lunch and spoon, right? Because I was self-medicating something, stress, anger, whatever, right? So I don't want to harp on it being prescription medicine only, I guess is what I'm saying, right? Because we also tend to self-medicate with candy, alcohol, food, all sorts of things.
Sure.
And so what would you say sort of caused you to transition from doing traditional medicine to integrative health medicine? Because I think that will...
Yeah, it was my own experience, and I want to use the word burnout. That's what I'm trying to I want to say that word out, so I'm trying to censor myself from saying that word because I know it's loaded. But I think it was burnout, and this happened 3 months into my finishing residency and beginning my attending position at a big sort of corporate chain hospital or medical system in the area. And what really got to me is that I felt like I was part of the problem. It was in the sense that I was practicing general, bread and butter primary care. And so seeing a lot of high blood pressure, a lot of diabetes, the chronic diseases of lifestyle. We know them to be diseases of lifestyle, and that's a loaded statement as well. But, really what was happening is that every month we would have to sit down as a group of physicians, and our metrics would be shown on Big Street as to how many patients do we have with an A1C under 6, how many with an A1C under 5.7, how many with an LBL under 130, how many with an LBL under 100. And of course, when you're doing this in a group setting, what is it? Promote and foster competition, right? Okay, so they had the Excel sheets were highlighted in green, red, and yellow. It's just like a great visual representation. But then it went further, and we actually would have to sit down every month with a pharmacist. And they would actually, I think I cooked this. Yeah, they would go through our patient panel and be like, why isn't this patient on a statin? Why isn't this patient on? As though we were Paxi-Benas and said, well, we had a discussion and they don't want to be on that medication. I don't know how else to about that. So I started to feel like, okay, I'm just a middleman here. I'm just pushing kind of like an agenda. And so, this also, I think even before that, I drew on my own experiences growing up with another culture in the home, and I'm from Ethiopia, and, our values are very different in that it's some of the intuitive things that you mentioned in the book about, how we intuitively care for our well-being. Those were present growing up and going through medical education. I was hearing those, like, where's the food? Where's the, how about trying, this natural intervention before, where's that? And so it started even in medical school. I remember they showed us a documentary kind of similar to like Forks Over Knives or one of those things. And I was like, yes, you're getting the good stuff. And this is only second year. But my cohort was like, what is nonsense? Where's the data? Like, why are they showing us this? And I couldn't believe the reaction. I said, okay, clearly I am not in Kansas. Okay, so I sort of just towed the line and got a very good medical education and trained at a very, very good institution thereafter. But all the while, I still had my sights on how do I bring the Kurson death into this? It was not aligned with who I am as an individual. So it was always kind of like a natural, like my antenna kept going toward integrative medicine. Some things I would experience in my own health journey that I consulted with colleagues and I knew their answer because I knew that toolbox already, and did my own GI for my own health, and it's like, okay, well, if this is working for me.
There was something you just said that I loved. You said, how to bring the person back in. And to hear her explain it, at least for me, from the medical side, it makes sense why we're so disconnected from ourselves, right? Like it's almost, when you broke down for me how me having a disruption, right, in the workplace literally triggered a chain of events from my cortisol, that was wild to me. Right? And the fact that when I was sitting there that day that I got diagnosed with high blood pressure, I felt fine. I thought everything's okay, right? I thought they were being quite dramatic. You know what I mean? Like, you gotta take my blood pressure in. Are you sure?
Which all I say about porn.
Yeah, I mean, I was, yeah. They're like, we're trying to figure out whether we should send you to the ER or not. Like, it was that high stage 2, borderline hypertensive crisis. And I was sitting there and I felt fine. And I thought I was fine because overwhelm was my baseline, right? And I think that's what happens. And I think the way overwhelm becomes our baseline is because we are disconnected from those 5 core areas. So when you told me about the 5 foundations of health, I just went, oh, I couldn't believe I was almost 50 years old. I should never heard of it. And I started,
People had it, by the way. You're not.
which is the shame. And I started to think of it as just like my own independent wells, right? Just to allow myself to think about what is draining me and what is filling me up. My physical well, am I eating properly? Am I getting enough rest? I remember you also telling me, see, your patients listen. Y'all think we don't listen. We listen. You were like, I need you to move your body throughout the day, not once a day. And, you know, I would sit there, as a writer, I would sit for hours. And I think so many of us, depending on our professions, depending on where we were educated, how we were educated generationally, culturally, right? I mean, there are so many things that go into us forming very bad habits and limiting beliefs about why we don't have time yet to care for ourselves. Coupled with what you just shared, we're just disconnected. The other night when we had a discussion at Eton, we were talking about how we ignore the feeling of hunger, which is wild to think about, right? But the limiting belief we keep telling ourselves is, I don't have time to eat, right? And so we're disconnected from understanding how that part of our physical well impacts our mental well, our emotional well, our social well.
It's built to adapt, so it's like, okay, this is what we're doing. Okay. You know how to make things start to function in a way to suit this circumstance, not suit balance and regulation.
Yeah. In this area in particular, I mean, I feel like DC is so high stress.
I felt it coming in here. I lived out in Sandy Spring, Maryland. I felt it coming in.
Oh, it's heady. It's like living in the hair. Yeah. What do you see? What are some of the most common things that you see with your patients and people who come in thinking through this whole wellness discussion that we're having? Because I imagine that most people come in like I did, right? Which is like, give me up, I had blood pressure variation. And you're like,
a lot of time, yes, there
like, we're holding on.
There are many people that come with a specific diagnosed illness or disease, and they want help with that. But a lot of these people are coming in with just fatigue. The biggest one is fatigue. By far, the biggest thing that I hear is fatigue, and that's one of the more tiredness, right? We bulldoze through that one. A lot of times I'll ask my patients when I'm asking them about walk me through a typical day. They tell me what a typical day is like in your life. Weekday, it's important. And what I'm really I'm listening to the daytime part, but it's really what's happening after usually after work, that I'm really dialing in on. And a lot of the kind of people will tell me about, their evening routine, a lot of times their kids and responsibilities and this stain and that practice and finishing up work, you get that. And one of the questions I'll ask is, if you can really just dial in, when do you actually start to feel tired immediately? And a lot of times people demonstrate, no, not soon after, not long after dinner. Maybe around 8:30, 9. And they're shocked. I sit next to them, like, that's actually when you should go to sleep. I'm guilty of this too, by the way. Right? I know I'm preaching and saying it, but I live in the modern world, and you look at the clock and I can't go sing Turkey. It's 9 o'clock. Right? And so we bulldoze through that queue.
Not me.
Good for you. What I've allowed myself to start doing is just, if I put my son to bed every night, if I fall asleep in there, I fall asleep.
Yeah. I think it's helpful to know what happens when you bulldoze.
Yes.
Through sleeping, right? So I think that's the thing. You don't often know what the consequences are, right? It's just like, oh man, I'm just going to be tired the next day. But for me, hearing that's when your cells need to regenerate. You might end up with, dementia, all of these things that are really...
Yes. It's very true.
It's all very
magnetic. It has so much built-in resilience that you don't notice right away. Maybe some people who are very sensitive to sleep, they might notice a full night's rest the next day. But a lot of times, for most people, it takes about a week or so to really start to feel run down.
But imagine you felt being run down as your baseline.
Oh, I should have kept going with what I was saying about the number one thing I hear about, concern I hear about is fatigue. I immediately will just, that's where 9 times out of 10 that's where the issue is that sleep it's altered in some way, or just not adequate in the number of hours, or
Yeah. I mean, I definitely suffered from insomnia before, and I mean, I can look back now, it was self-induced. I mean, I had a couple of friends here from law school. We're conditioned from first year of law school. Hello and welcome. Thought you could sneak in here and I could call you out. It was self-induced, right? Because we had to study, and the next thing you know, we're first year associates, right? And I mean, I had colleagues pass out in their offices. You know what I mean? We're 28, 29 years old. And even now, and I shared this with you, I mean, because of those years of conditioning, I can sit still for 16 hours if I need to. It's not good, right? But and so I do think that there are certain professions, I do think there are certain cities like this city that are prone to really creating unhealthy habits. And that makes it a little harder.
Absolutely. It's very left and right on, the people on the racetrack. You're not doing anything very drastically different from weight to bowl. Yeah. And I had the benefit of talking to people behind a closed door. So I know just how common being unwell is.
Yeah.
But you would never walking down the street. I was just observing as I was driving down here. It's just interesting. People, they're just going about their business. Some have headphones on. They're walking. A lot of people walking away from work. Some people going to, having a yoga mat. I had a different perspective when I just look out and I imagine I wonder how well that person slept. I wonder if that person, did they reach up? Because the truth is, when you get to speak to someone privately, you really learn just how much they're suffering, and it's so common.
I don't think we know we're suffering. And this is why, I didn't know I was suffering, which is why I ended up writing this book. And originally it was just supposed to be about how to let go of our limiting beliefs, right? Like Afro-minimalist guide, let go of your things, less of liberation, let go of your limiting beliefs. And
I end up with high blood pressure. I end up in your office, and it's almost like, that scene in A Beautiful Mind when everything just starts to make sense, and I'm like, and that's what the overwhelm is. I am unwell, right? But I think it's having that self-assessment tool and being able to say, in that moment when I do feel tired, why? Right? I think we don't have a way to self-assess, right? We don't have a way to say to ourselves, let me think through what this is. Is it my physical well that's strained? Is it my emotional well that's strained? When we think about even just like our emotions, that emotional well, our inability to emote, because we don't have time to emote, because there's shame around emoting, right? Like all of those things, I just feel like it's so important for us to be able to just sit with ourselves and be able to self-assess where and why we are unwell. And I do feel like it is way too outsourced, right? And that's a way for us to start reconnecting with that.
I mean, I do in a way. The wellness industry is in part heavily because of this, because of the advent of, we're in the technological age, so of course there's no shortage of devices that can track things for you now and tell. And that in and of itself is a symptom of how disconnected we are, that we need something to tell us to breathe, right?
Stand up.
Stand up, right? Right. Yeah. And I never. There is a positive side to it too, which is, of course, if for a person that is really that disconnected, it is useful to really see what's happening in the body. That's why I do the advanced diagnostic testing that I do to show someone in black and white. I already know what's going on, right? And I mean, I didn't need a test to tell me that what your cortisol curve probably looked like, but it's helpful for you to see it, in black and white, like this is actually what's going on in your body. But it's a symptom of I say this very often in my patient appointments, and that it's very, very hard to be a modern human being. And I'm trying to understand what's happening in the body and with a person. I'm constantly having to take myself out of the context of the modern world and try to understand like what's going on. Why did this mechanism evolve in the first place? Or why does it exist? Okay, now if I understand why we evolved it in the way that we evolved it, what could possibly be going on for it to be behaving this way? What environmental cues is it getting to make it behave in the way that's manifesting for this person? But it's very difficult to be a modern human being.
Yeah, and I mean, I talk about that a little bit in the book, how wellness was just sort of natural and a way of life for us before. I mean, and I love modern technology. Of course, so we give it our aesthetics, right? But I do think that it has become problematic. And I think there's a book called Praise of Slowness. I don't know if anyone has ever read that book. It's a beautiful book. It's by an author. His name is Carl Honore. And quick story, he wrote this book because he was reading an article in a newspaper about 1-minute bedtime stories. And he was like, oh my God, I have got to get these 1-minute bedtime stories for my son. And then he was like, I cannot believe I want 1-minute bedtime stories, right? And then he just like got into this, he wanted to study the culture of speed, right? And this, what you're talking about, like this evolution, he started with the invention of the light bulb. Like he just goes through like this whole, and you understand how we got into this culture of speed, right? Before the light bulb, we're on a natural circadian rhythm.
Right? Right. Go down here. Listen.
Right. It's the light bulb, then it's the clock, then it's the, you know what I mean? And then there were these lunch hours, and then it's just like this evolution. And we feel the need to just do everything so fast, that we have to do so much, and it's right. What do you tell your patients? Because I didn't have this, you told me about the 5 foundations when I was good. But I imagine
then you have people that are like, I just don't have time.
Oh, yes.
What do you say to that?
I know it's a perception, right? It's a perception. And usually it speaks to something else going on, which is a feeling of overwhelm, a feeling that, and I mean, I'm also certified in tree as a life coach, so I tend to group that into the discussion as well. And a lot of times it does go deeper into maybe feeling misaligned with how they're spending their time. They help feel a sense of autonomy of ADC with big A's, right? And how they're spending their time. And so a lot of time, the time that is their own, just for the sake, because they have the free will, it's used however they want to, we end up using it in ways that are not,
zero.
that are not adapting. So that, like revenge time is a big people are, I had Asian I saw today, it was like, I don't know what I should do. Well, as the kids are down, I know what I should do because, I've given my time to my work, to my family, and finally, when the house is quiet, it's silly. I know it does nothing for me for the next day, for the day after that, but it's just my own decision. Yeah, and so usually when someone has that perception about having enough time, that's just a symptom.
Yeah, I think we have a lot of limiting beliefs about time as well. Hi, come on in, y'all. I just call everybody out. You're not at all. Yeah, I think we have a lot of limiting beliefs about time. I think, and for me, beautiful. For me, I don't think I had a concept of time, y'all. Like, I didn't have after leaving the practice of law, which I don't know what the billable hour situation is now, but I used to have to bill in 6-minute increments. Yeah, it's the same. So when I was billing in 6-minute increments, I was very unaware of a minute, and of an hour. And then as I transitioned into government and academia and all these different spaces, and it was such a rigid way of being to be like, okay, every 6 minutes, But I think I lost the concept of time. So one thing that helped me, and I share this in the book, is I started to look, part of it is easy math, but I started to look at every hour as $1,000. Okay? And because I wanted to understand how I was spending my time. Looking at every hour is $1,000 and saying to myself, I start every day with $24,000. $8,000 if I do what I'm supposed to do. $8,000 is gone to sleep, right? But let's just say it's worth like $6,000. And then at the time, my daughter was younger, and so it would be like this could be, and then it would be, and then I would look up. And by the time I haven't even left my bed yet, I have $5,000 left, right? So I think oftentimes we don't budget and allocate our time. So then it made me want to be much more intentional with those 5 hours that I would have, right? So I do think there's a lot of limiting, when I hear I don't have enough time, there's some limiting belief around time, or there's some lack of a concept of understanding how much time one actually has and how they're spending it.
And even to speak to you with that a little bit more as it relates to someone specifically like a wellness journey, a physical wellness journey. It's hard to quantify when you're not seeing immediate control. Right? It's hard to, at first, especially if you're any kind of meeting to achieve, to accept there's a lot of inertia at first. And so when you don't see any immediate benefit, maybe with sleep you feel refreshed the next day and things like that, but maybe you're moving or changing dietary habits, you don't instantly see the change right away, especially as it relates to stress reducing practice. That's a big area that I usually have a lot of encouraging.
It's hard here. No, it's hard here. And I think, any of us that have traveled outside, I mean, we could just go visit a friend in Bowie and we're like,
Oh, yeah.
trees, fresh air, and so I do think we have to be more intentional. And so that's really what the book is about, is getting us to understand where can we choose less in our lives so we have more time and energy to care for ourselves, right? And even I think that word care, I like the word honor. I'm like, we need to honor ourselves, right? For me, as part of this journey, language has been very important, right? Overwhelm is a word that had clearly lost its meaning for me, right? Like it was a word that, several decades ago, you told your doctor you were overwhelmed. Whoa. Let's, you know what I mean? Now they're like, oh, okay.
Come on.
Yeah. Exactly. Right? So I do think, to your point, like the word burnout, overwhelm. And so like really looking at it in a way, how can I honor myself? How could I be intentional about that? I mentioned that I have some friends who are here from law school that came up, which means everything to me. And there was a time that I would not have made time today, right? I would have said, oh my God, I have this book event, I got a book, right? Oh, we were bustling with colleagues, you know what I mean? And I was watching the clock, like I was having enough time, but we get one hood like this, right? And I do believe that many of us who are of a certain age, most of us are like first gen, being able to even think about and consider our wellness, to have the resources and means to be well, right? Which means we're learning as we go. So also stop being like so hard on myself about it. We gotta show ourselves grace. And I think it's really important to hear that from a doctor.
Yes.
Like what are some of the things that you tell you, because it is very, when you get to that moment when you realize self-neglect and self-abandonment were like big words for me, right? Like I had to frame it in a way, I'm not taking care of myself.
You're right.
That just didn't, it didn't
watered
hit the
down,
same right away.
exactly.
Yeah, right?
Yeah.
Like, you have to take care of yourself, right? But when
Myself.
when I say I'm abandoning myself, or I'm neglecting myself by not eating, right? Like that hit differently. And then there's this level of guilt that comes, right? So like, what are some ways that you would encourage people who are just starting to run this journey? Let's say we're first in our family, right? No one ever mentioned anything about wellness in my house. Like,
See,
like what are you, go get some saltine crackers.
and you saw a lot of violence in my house, right? A lot of behavior of self-abandoning, of
We see a lot of modeling of that.
kickers, things of everyone else's stage before their own, and
So how do you encourage patients to like sort of step into this journey?
one thing I found to be really useful, helpful, is that I try to free. It's more, people already intuitively know what's going on. I'm not that single person who doesn't intuitively already know what's going on with their health and well-being, what needs to happen. Some of the most critical diagnoses I mean, even in conventional medicine, is when I wasn't getting answers from the data with the laptop down and say, "Tell it to me again." Right, because maybe I wasn't listening. And sure enough, what I just listened, the person knew exactly, led me to where I needed to palpate.
Do we ignore that though, or do we like self-diagnose?
No.
Yeah,
Okay.
apparently we do. I think it goes back to the time thing too, right? And then fear, right? Like when we add in certain cultural dynamics, right? There is a very justifiable fear about going to the doctor, right? Like hearing stories that are like, oh, so-and-so was fine, and then they went to the doctor, and then they never, you know what I mean? Like we hear a lot on the,
Catastrophic.
yeah, especially, I mean, I'm from the South, so we hear a lot of stories.
Double trauma is a real thing.
It is.
I had my own experiences as a physician,
Wow.
right, with the healthcare system that is, I mean, it's real. It's real. It's something to, as far as self-diagnosis, I think I always try to frame things in less of a black and white way, or like there is use in a lot of those people are like sort of like head down admitting like I want to go and like it's like as you should have, as you should have.
Yes.
What I'm here for is to give you context, to take out the noise and give you the signal. Right?
But when you want to Google it, yes. By the time I read through all this, I'm like, it's like, congratulations, you are. Yeah. And so I do think that also plays a role in like the fear and stuff like that, right? Yeah, and so I think that fear of, so you're saying we intuitively know.
Oh yes, absolutely.
So I could look back and I could say, I could think about how that day when I was sitting there, her asked me all these questions, and they're like, you drove here? I'm like, I drove here, right? And they're like, I mean, does your vision ever get blurry? And I'm like, yeah, I just thought I was hungry. Yeah, and for me, like, perimenopause is the catch-all. I'm like, child, that's perimenopause. It's just perimenopause,
And it can be.
Yeah, and so I do think that we have a tendency to want to self-diagnose, maybe even just to sort of combat that fear.
And then I think it's normal that I want to normalize that. I think that before organized medicine, I say like it's organized, right? But like well, truly, the history it clearly shows that there was a campaign to move people away from the type of indigenous medicine that that was passed down from generation to generation. Literally telling people you don't know, the expert knows. During this testing with the Flexner report during the Wilson era, and there was a concerted effort to catalyze people into sort of like a systematized form of healthcare. So there's and also we've also what's happened in conventional medicine is we've complicated health to the point that it is confusing. To the point that you do need an expert, someone who studied it for 4 years and 7 years, 3 to 7 years of a residence. You need someone to help you fix it. But it's always been, it was simple 1,000 years ago. It's still simple today, eating, doing pot. It will always be simple as to what it takes to be healthy and well. What's complicated is the demands for our lifestyle. That's what complicates stuff. But I think, as far as you brought up, like how do I usually approach someone who is just getting started by health and wellness journey? And what I've started to do is to kind of just create a narrative for the person where they start to understand the relationship between what's going on intellectually, cognitively, and in your body. And the way I frame it is it's like a parent-child relationship, which is why the term self-abandonment, self-neglect is really, really true. Like it's really the correct way because the body it's at the mercy of the mind. It cannot, when it is running low, when blood sugar is running low on energy, it cannot itself go and get something over the fridge. The brain has to agree. Oh yes, I am going for reaction. Let me go see this body. So it's a parent-child type dynamic that happens where the body is a body.
Yeah.
Have to nourish it, have to care for it about it. You have to, the parent has to, and everyone really deep, it does harp on a lot of what we have experienced in our youth as far as our needs and how how big do you need them? Do you more than cheap? Are they important? So that dynamic, once I really frame it that way for someone, they really start to see like, oh, I actually have to kick up for this thing.
Yeah.
It can't do it by itself. I have to give it rest. I have to agree to see. Yeah, as it would statistics.
Yeah, I mean, the statistics are painful,
Right? Like it actually wasn't uncommon for me to be under the age of 50 and diagnosed with high blood pressure from stress. It is crazy to say out loud. Which is crazy to say out loud. And so, yeah, I do think, I love this idea. I feel like every time I'm like, "Ooh, something new." But I love this idea of like my brain being the parent and my body being the child. And like, I need to listen, right? Because that's the brain is saying, the body is saying, I'm hungry. Yeah, I'm tired. And the brain is what is saying, yes, go get food, or no, kush fur.
That's right.
Right?
So the way that communicates is the nervous system, which is why we feel things. A lot of times people will feel a sense of angst and they don't know that's how the body's trying to communicate. That's all that is. It's just trying to communicate.
And that is what you told me when you said, Christy, because I was hysterical. I couldn't put it into words in book, but I was very emotional. I mean, I said I burst into tears, but I was I was hysterical. And you consoled me and you said, the thing is, you can be well and you will be well. Our bodies are always, always trying to be well. We just have to learn to listen.
Wellness is our default state. It is our default. We had to learn to be unwell.
Isn't that wild?
It's the truth.
Yeah.
The truth.
Yeah. And I mean, you guys are going to get to ask questions to my Instagram feedback. I'm so excited. So I want to make sure we have a Q&A time. So ask Dr. G all the questions that you have about wellness. Because I just think this area is so... We have learned how to be unwell and to do that really well. I think we are walking around very much like I was that day, thinking that I'm fine and unwell is the baseline.
And it's understandable in a culture, in a society, that the metrics of, success are they're very limited. And so it does, I try to frame things in a way that removes the most blame from an individual. Because it's not that the guilt, the shame, it's not there, it's not healing. And of course, is there individual onus in anything? Yes, there is. But you have to look at the context in which I'll say a organism, right? If we're just thinking of biology at large, is existing. The environment dictates the outcome.
We're in a terrible petri dish.
Stop.
Does anyone have questions?
We've got a microphone, so we can.
Okay, so my question is actually about, if we're wanting to move toward wellness and less is liberation that takes us on that path, can you talk to us a little bit about the calculation that you make around what it is that you do find yourself trying to create less of and trying to minimize? Because there are so many great things in modern life, and so many relationships, and so many things to try, and so much to do all the time. So how do you kind of shed that as you move toward wellness?
I'll share my personal experience, and then they can, I guess, give the medical perspective. For me, it was honestly understanding that I was a people pleaser. And that was hard for me to sort of come to terms with. I didn't see myself as a people pleaser. And I had a therapist tell me,
you know, Christine, sometimes people pleasing can be inaction, right? And it was this idea that I never wanted to ruffle the feathers. I never wanted to say no. I always wanted to be helpful. I was always doing, right? And so I had to do less. Like I had to do less, right? I had to be willing to say no. I had to shed all these limiting beliefs I had around productivity, right? And believing I didn't have time to do certain things. And it took a lot of work, and it was a lot of guilt and shame in that. But when I realized oftentimes I found myself doing the most, not even because someone asked me, I would volunteer, right? So the example I like to give is if we're all just here gathering and I hear someone say, "Ma'am, I need a stamp." You're on top of me. They just made a statement, but here I would be. You know what? I think I got a stamp. Let me go, right? And I go get the stamp, right? And I go, "Oh my God, thank you. Girl, we about to go to the post office because I'm going to walk by there." You know what I mean? Like my time would be eaten up by just over giving, right? And then having to get to the place, why am I over giving, right? This need to be needed, right? And where did that come from, right? So it is usually tied to something that you understand, because again, it's not, we are naturally self-preservation, right? So it's like, why am I abandoning myself? Why am I neglecting myself to the benefit of others? And the definition that I talk about in the book is of selfishness. And I struggled with that word growing up. I was taught not to be selfish. Being selfish was the absolute worst thing that I could be. And because of that, I made sure that I was self-sacrificing, right? Because I didn't want to be called selfish. And as part of this book, I'm like, I just need to go through and like really understand these words. I told you language was really big for me. And I found a definition of selfishness that made so much sense to me. And it was being chiefly concerned with one's own profit and pleasure. Not only concerned, chiefly concerned, right? And I had never been chiefly concerned with myself, right? If I was, I would be like, dang, that's a shame she used stamp. Problem. You know what I mean? It's like, here I am, girl, you know? And so I think like, it's a lot of unlearning. And when and again, I talk about grieving those identities and I love the identity of being a helper. I love the identity of being seen as someone who, Christine is you don't even need to reach out on Google, ask Christine. You know what I mean? Like I loved being needed in that way until it came at a cost, right? And it took a toll. And so I think for me, it was the shedding of a lot of limiting beliefs, identities, behaviors, all of that opened up so much more time and energy for me to care for myself.
That's deep. Ooh, I love that. Absolutely. I think that's something that we, especially as women, you say, tend to struggle with maybe a little bit more. It's very, if you're thinking of personality traits, there are ones that are more feminine and more masculine, and being more self-concerned is definitely a more masculine type of quality. And that's what you were talking about, the field of law. Yeah, they're talking about before what it means for a woman with her feminine energy to be in that kind of a field. It's, I don't ever label people, but when I'm doing my interview and someone, they say, sometimes I can actually almost predict it, but they're going to tell me their word. But there's this sense of, angst that is like palpable, right? That you can, and it's when you have to be in an energy that is not aligned with your natural energy. It's a very, very draining. Yeah, it's very draining. And that goes for any. That was just an example that you know, a lot of times we have to show up as an acceptable self. There's all sorts of, you know, a big thing in how that, you know, that impacts how we feel like we are being perceived is, of course, and why can we change their behaviors or settings is stereotype.
Yeah.
Right. Which is a big one. And so that has an absolute impact on, we think these things are just like social constructs or psychological kind of phenomena, but they impact biology and physiology. So to answer your question for more of a prescriptive, one of the first things I'm usually trying to get my patients to do is to reduce consumption, that it's more intellectual consumption. So becoming more of a minimalist as it relates to consuming, especially media. Information in general, but starting with media. And the reason for that is our brain cannot help but to process information. If it's presented with information, you're processing information right now, right? Like all the time. It never stops. Even our subconscious when you sleep that's listening. So that is very taxing. Or especially in the context of the world with all the bells and whistles and days and you name it, all sorts of things that we add to keep us abreast of whatever's happening. It's very taxing on our system. And so a good place to start with a wellness journey is before even trying to focus on how you're eating or how you're, you know, like maybe even the sleep, I mean, at least I feel pretty soon because it's so foundational, but at least turning the faucet down on how much processing your brain is doing. Limiting low culture, you don't, yeah, but just try to, you know, get the headlines and move on, right? That's essentially. Yes, sir.
You almost answered my question.
Oh, okay.
3 years ago, I lost my mother, almost 3 years. And literally, we went to the hospital, and 15 days later, she was gone. And after that, I took over her company. Like literally, my mother died, and I went into the office, and I was like, okay, what do we have to do? And we went from that, and perimenopause, and stress, because my mother was a government contractor. So, like, I have all these things that are tugging at my nervous system. I mean, like, seriously, like, you know that film where you're like, I'm having a stroke?
Yeah.
And I like, you don't know what's on you. You have all the same property. And, I'm like, I never, like, I don't even know what it is. I can't even explain it to people because I never really felt like I had an opportunity to grieve. I was kind of thrust into a career that I had wanted no parts of. And now the world is ending. And I'm just like, okay, so what do I do? Because, now the term functional freeze is like such a big thing, right? But seriously, sometimes I do not want to get out of bed. When I get out of bed, I go to the office, I'm like, if I can do one thing today, and I was successful. But I can't live my life like that because I'm coming home, So, I'm like, where do I start? Because people don't understand. Like, if you've never had that kind, I really sympathize with myself because this is a lot.
It's a lot, first of all.
And it's a lot. I'm going through it, but you can't really tell anybody else because they don't understand. You're like,
But they're going through it too.
yeah. And you tell people, I work at government lunch, and they're like, you're rich. But I'm just saying, like, I don't even know where to be with the base on here. I don't even know where to begin.
Yeah. So your body is communicating to you that attention is needed. This sense of what you're sensing in your nervous system, that's, again, like I said, that's the only way the body could communicate attention is needed. And everything that you mentioned having gone through it's stored there in your nervous system. It's just being held there. Everything that our bodies do is always adaptive, by the way. The body is always trying to do something in our best interest. And usually is prioritizing short-term best interests over long-term best interests, right? So it's just going to be through the short-term, what needs to get done, right? Over time, it ends up having more deleterious effects because we use the analogy of a balance beam. And when we are even on the balance beam and upright, that's called homeostasis. When we are tilted on the balance beam because of the different burdens that our body's dealing with, mentally, psychologically, emotionally, that we're dealing with, that's called allostasis or allostatic load. So you're dealing with a lot of allostatic load, right? You're kind of like tilted maybe 45 degrees on that balance beam. You're still on it, right? Which is a good thing. But it sounds like, and all of the things that you mentioned, they are physiological stressors in the sense that, perimenopause in and of itself is something completely natural, but it's very jarring for the reproductive organ. They're like, great, go for it. You know what's going on. But the heart, the brain, everything else that also has estrogen and progesterone receptors, it's like, what's happening? What's going on, right? So it's very, very jarring. So I want to validate what you're experiencing, and that is it's real, right? You have experienced a lot. I hope that in a way this is maybe a opportunity that you'll say, like, maybe I need to do a deeper dive, or you can hope it's always start with those foundations though, because that's all I do in the sense, I have a lot of tools and toolbox in that I can put a lot of icing on the cake and help your body, and you can use this supplement or this intervention to alleviate some of the tilt on that balance beam, but it still comes back to foundations. A lot of times people are often looking for, the quick fix and like, yeah, I hear you with the foundations, but what, supplement, I thought I heard about this thing on Instagram. Yes, but the foundations are foundational. So it's sleep, just reiterating, in sleep, individualized nutrition, so it's not what it looks like for everyone else. It has to work for you, your body's needs. Movement is, I make a point of saying movement and not exercise, because it should be throughout the day, and it's literally anything that's not in a chair or a bed. It's daily stress reduction. The only thing that you do right now.
This is it.
This is a good one. What I usually like to recommend is breath. It is magical for our nervous system. What you're doing in real time is I hate to use the word hack because I already about hack, but yeah. But it is actually, you're pressing the nervous system brake out. That's what you're doing with breath work. So we live in our fight or flight division of our nervous system, the sympathetic division. When you do breath work, it's essentially you're voluntarily sighing. We all sigh. When we sigh, that's literally the brain's like, okay, we're getting a little too wound up. You need to have a prolonged exhalation. So we sigh, and that actually triggers our vagus nerve, which is the nerve that dominates the parasympathetic region. Heart rate comes down, respiratory rate comes down, blood pressure comes down. So all of these things happen in real time. So breath work is a great thing that you can begin with. It doesn't take much. It's just 1 or 2 times a day of doing a breathwork exercise as immediate impact and long-term impact, cumulative effect. And then, of course, connecting. Meaning, purpose, and connection. There is a part of us, the observer in all of us, that cannot be fooled. It knows what's up all the time, right? Even though we're telling ourselves this story, you're like, oh, God, I'm doing good. I'm doing good for the world. And I'm doing this, like, yeah, but do you feel seen? Do you feel valued? Do you feel heard? Do you have agency? Are you autonomous, or are you doing with somebody? Are you authentic? Your authentic self, right? And so this is where a lot of that social well, maybe the mental well, speaks more to sort of the observer looking at this part of us and assessing how enlightened we are with both, how much we need for us. And don't get in your eye, it should be to be a little practical. Well, okay, but it's just an invitation to visit the
Visit the Lilies, and we are at time. The Dr. G's hang around, right? You're gonna hang around. So she is obviously a wonderful doctor. She's my doctor. And I did have her bring some information and that he is looking for an integrative health doctor, his questions. So she's gonna hang around. We are gonna sign a few books. So yeah, while I'm signing, feel free to talk to Dr. G and we're good to go.
recipe.